Sa pangunguna ng COMELEC at ng KBP, nagsanib pwersa ang mga radyo at television networks sa Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao para maihatid sa inyo ang forum na ito. Ako si Sean Yao ng One News. Makakasama natin sa forum na ito ang ating mga panelists na si Ed Lingao ng One News at Cesar Chavez ng DZRH. Ito ang COMELEC KBP PiliPinas Forum 2022. Na lang, halalan na. Pero nais pa rin tulungan ng COMELEC itong mga botante natin sa pagpili ng mga tamang kandidato. At ngayon, makakasama natin ang presidential candidate na si Ernesto Abella. Welcome to the forum, Sec.
Thank you, Sean.
Simulan na natin ang forum sa inyong opening statement. Bibigyan namin kayo ng 5 minuto na ilatag ang inyong plataforma. Ang tanong, paano mo iaahon ang Pilipinas sa mga hamon at krisis na hinaharap nito ngayon?
Okay, maraming salamat po. Thank you for the opportunity na makasalamuha kayo, Ed, Cesar, and Sean, of course. No? Ito pong yung tanong nyo, paano ba ang plano natin upang maiahon ang ating mga mamamayan sa kahirapan? Una siguro magsisimula ako sa paniwala ako na ang Pilipinas ay isang bayan na may tawag at tadhana. Mayaman siya, mayaman sa likas na yaman, mayaman sa tao, mayaman sa values. Pero ang laki pa rin talaga ng kanyang ang laki ng agwat between rich and poor. No? According to statistics, may 23 to 26 million Filipino na below poverty level. And below poverty level means family of 6 receiving 12,000 pesos a month. Below 12,000 pesos a month. At saka, pero sa loob nun, ng 23 to 26 million na iyan, ay meron tayong 12.5 million Filipinos na nakakaranas ng gutom on a regular basis. So yun ang tinatanong mong hirap, no? Paano maiaahon sila? Of course, ang ating concerns are that our GDP should increase, we should take care of that, no? Pero naniniwala ako na meron talaga tayong dapat na mas malaki yung bottom line natin. More than just GDP, we need people, planet, profit, of course, revenue, and purpose. Na hindi dapat natin malimutan kung ano tayo, kung sino tayo. Balikan natin yung yaman, no? Ang Pilipino, meron tayong mga 10, no, sa Forbes Rich List. At yun sa Forbes Rich List na yan, ay meron din tayong, below that, meron din tayong mga 400,000, nearly 400,000 Filipinos na considered rich. And yet, katulad ng sinasabi ko, meron tayong 23 to 26 million people who are living in poverty. Ngayon, napansin ko rin sa trabaho ko sa DFA, dati kong trabaho sa DFA, na may mga before the pandemic, mga 4,000 to 5,000 people applying for jobs outside. At napansin ko lang kapag pinag-aaralan ko, karamihan nito ay mga people with low skills. At mukhang doon yata nagigir yung ating economic policies na magpadala ng tao sa labas. Kasi nga naman, it brings in about $30 billion US dollars a year. So, it readily brings in the cash for us to be able to pay off our debts. Based on our, yung government spending, mga 40 to 60% yata pumupunta sa debt payment. So, kailangan talaga ng inflow. In which case, ang nangyayari, instead of really pushing sana yung mga mega industries, parang mukhang, no, if you look at it, mukhang ang naging economic strategy natin is to send out people, have them send money in. But it doesn't cover every need. So kung titignan kasi natin lately, for example, not lately, but for the past several months, and of course years, nung kausap ko pa yung mga, nagta-town hall pa kami sa DFA, yung mga kausap natin ng mga Pilipino, kadalasan sa kanila, mga karamihan na nakausap, for some reason or other, kausap namin mga farmers, no? At lagi lang inaangat, sabi, sir, ano ba, paano nyo kami matutulungan, no? Una-una yung pataba, presyo ng pataba, hanggang dyan na, yung presyo ng, because of RCL, Rice Tariffication Law, hanggang dyan lang. So, ang nipis talaga ng kanilang, ang nipis ng kanilang kita. I was talking with a number of farmers just very recently, and sabi nga, ibibenta na nila yung kanilang property. Ang tanong ko, kanino ibibenta? Lugi naman kaya? Sabi na, sir, sa mga land developers. So, there seems to be, may medyo asymmetrical yung natin, no? Yung growth natin. May kumikita sa lugi na marami. So, if there's anything that ang plano talaga natin, Sean, like you asked, is that kung pwede, if you can just make a concrete goal of lifting up this 23 to 26 million people out of poverty and to eradicate yung hunger ng 12.5 million. How do we do that? We do that by making, number one, agriculture a mega industry. I know that in the scheme of things, no, ang baba talaga ng agrikultura. We only spend so much on agriculture. So what we would really like to do is make it a mega industry along with IT, digital, along with education and health. Why? Because these are all part of it. Of course, kaakibat nung sa agriculture is also yung, for example, the domestic tourism. Gusto natin talaga na sumubay sila sa pag-grow ng agriculture. Kasi malaki yan. If what we intend to do, Cesar, is to build an agricultural ecosystem. Meaning to say, idikit natin sa research and development with the schools, manufacturing, for example, and then also specialized specialized economic zones where na ilalagay natin, let's say, in very strategic places where there is really hunger, no, incidence of hunger. Mindanao and the Visayas, meron talagang specialized economic zones doon na kung saan we'd like to be able to address and make sure that our hungry Filipinos are addressed and that there'll be more jobs and there'll be more opportunities. Basically, yun.
All right, we'll just pause for a short break. At sa susunod na parte ng ating forum, aalamin natin kung ano ang plano ng mga kandidato tungkol sa pagtaas ng presyo ng mga bilihin, matinding kahirapan at kawalan ng trabaho. Abangan natin yan sa pagbabalik ng COMELEC KBP Pilipinas Forum 2022. Nagbabalik ang COMELEC KBP PiliPinas Forum 2022. Sisimulan natin ang forum na ito sa presyo ng mga bilihin at kahirapan. Ang ating unang tanong ay manggagaling kay Ed Lingao. Ed.
Hi, sir. Good day to you at thank you for joining us today. Sir, ang sabi kasi ng marami, in the end, madidistill mo lahat ng plataforma into bulsa at bilihin. I mean, dikit-dikit naman lahat. Pero sa huli, ano mo mabibili mo at ano makakain mo.
Correct.
Ngayon po, I know you talked about turning agriculture into a mega industry, but I'd like to ask for particulars and specifics. How do you intend to empower the peso of the ordinary Filipino and also as well to bring down the prices of basic goods? Yun po, basically ganun po. Anong inyong plano, whether with proposals for the legislature or executive action?
Well, among other things talaga, Ed, is it's very important to understand that we have leakage, financial leakages. For example, in terms of corruption, we lose about something like 700 billion pesos to corruption every month. So one of the first things we'd like to do within the first 100 days is to be able to, for example, make sure that corrupt government officials are effectively penalized. I mean, yun talagang effect. I mean,
everybody would agree with you on that. All the candidates would agree with you on that.
Of course. On the other
How would you do it, sir?
Well, of course, it's a process, and that will have to be done. But it will be done. It should be addressed within the first 100 days. Okay. So yun, isa yan. And then also the other thing is to be able to make sure that we katulad ng yung tawag nito, yung to be able to make sure that within yung mga policies na which need urgent, like for example, making sure that everything that, for example, businesses that are urgent and priority, not projects that are urgent priority, should be, as long as their necessary requirements are given, should be given their, within the first 100 days. Dapat ma-release yung kanilang mga Tsaka the other one is if we can, again, urgently review lahat ng mga pending na hindi na-address ng mga polisiya, mga project, at dapat maantawayan na kagad yan.
Maliwanag na ba, Secretary, sa inyo, just in case kayo ang maging Pangulo? Ano yung mga immediate executive orders na ilalabas niyo related to bulsa at bilihin?
Basically, katulad na sinabi ko, yun. Number one, make sure that ma-review kaagad natin kung ano yung mga polisiya na that need to be reviewed very currently. For example, yung mga projects na among other things, for example, yung mga for example, renewables, everything, the energy, for example,
Kuryente, for example, sir, di ba?
That's right.
If you don't mind, i-direct ako doon. Sir, problema natin na presyo ng kuryente.
Right.
We're among the highest, if not the highest in the region. And that affects everything else.
Correct.
Yung presyo at yung panggastos mo. So, anything you have in mind for that?
Of course, kailangan we need to be able to source our renewables, no? Dapat mabigyan pansin, it needs maantabayanan, and we should have a very clear focus on making sure that we have that yung ating alternatives, so for example, the renewable wind turbine and wind turbine and solar should be given exact attention as soon as possible so that we can address that. And also we're of course a little bit alanganin tayo sa, for example, nuclear because of certain political implications. Pero we're open to discussing that.
Secretary, again, sa kuryente. Ako ay taga Camarines Sur. 10 hours, 11 hours, 15 hours sa isang araw, 3 beses sa isang linggo. 2 dekada na yan, Secretary. Ano ang pagkakaiba ho ninyo sa pagbibigay ng solusyon dito?
Okay, number one, I'm not that familiar with CAMSUR. But let me just ask, for example, why exactly is it being held up?
It's basically cooperative. No? Isang problema ngayon sa kuryente sa buong bansa, yung electric cooperative mismanagement and of course other than resources. Pero kayo, saan kayo naiiba rito? Anong solusyon ho ninyo para mabawasan itong mga brownout na ito? Happening not only in Luzon, including Visayas and Mindanao.
Patungan ko na rin, sir, kasi problema rin sa Mindanao yung brownout.
Correct. No, the thing is, katulad niyan, what did I do? I asked him exactly why. Because I cannot just be mouthing solutions of
Then I said
platitude.
mismanagement.
Correct.
Resources.
In which case, there must be a very quick review of what is happening in terms exactly of what mismanagement is all about. And that should be given first priority, especially within the first 100 days.
Alright, pag-usapan naman natin ang trabaho, kabuhayan at negosyo ng mga Pilipino. So kawing pa rin to sa mga topics natin earlier on. At ang ating unang tanong ay manggagaling naman kay Cesar Chavez. Hi, Cesar.
Thank you, Sean. Secretary, binanggit ninyo ang Pilipinas ay maswerte sapagkat nakatadhana tayo ng maraming kayamanan.
Tama.
Pero at the same time, binanggit ho ninyo na 23 to 26 million people, Filipinos, living below poverty incidence. Pero pag-usapan muna natin yung sweldo. 537 pesos. Ang sweldo araw-araw, Secretary. Ang tanong ko ay dalawa, rolled into one. Ano ang magiging executive action ninyo? Kasama ang legislative agenda, kung mayroon man isa, dalawa, na gagawin ho ninyo. First 100 days.
Within the first 100 days, of course, ang plan, well, immediately, of course, yung mga ayuda has to be rolled out.
All right.
That's already taken for granted. But the other one is talaga, what we need is to be able to set the foundations for, katulad ng sinasabi kong, ano tawag nito, mega industry, for example. We can come up with one of the agriculture as a mega industry. One among other things, what we'd like to do is to be able to partner, let's say, with IPs in order to be able to make sure that, for example, we can effectively come into a partnership with them so that we can have plantations for trees, fruit, timber, so that magkaroon tayo ng not just opportunities for jobs but also opportunities for businesses. So these are among other things that we have lined up.
Secretary, reporter pala ako, 1987.
Yes.
Lagi nang hinihingi yung pagtataas ng sweldo. Taon-taon ho yan, May 1. Kayo ho, ano ang policy framework ko ninyo?
Basically, if you're asking me, we should give fair wages. Fair wages. I was talking with
Collective bargaining agreement o legislative?
It has to be both. It has to result from a conversation. Pag-usapan natin kung ano talaga ang pupwede. And when I say pag-usapan, I mean, for example, one of the things that what was being suggested to me yesterday was very recently was that, for example, if you give a fair level minimum wage all over the nation, then you could decongest the city kasi magtatakbuhan sila sa baba. Of course, what you need to do is I don't know if you can immediately do that, but maybe you can transition just as long as, for example, one of the things that we could do is, for example, transfer, for example, encourage domestic tourism, apart from domestic tourism, ecotourism, so that you could have a more robust hospitality industry in the provinces. Especially kung medyo mas neglected, maganda nga pero wala nga mga negosyo, so we could develop stuff like that. And or, for example, when we develop agricultural industry, we could also develop yung the health and wellness aspect. Like, for example, we could actually, one of the most successful businesses right now is this mangosteen thing. And the bitter herbs. Hindi lang pinapansin yung mga ganun, but we could actually scale that up and make sure that there are jobs, and not just automated jobs, but actually jobs for many people, including design, creativity, and planting.
How do you plan, Yasek, to make it trickle down though? Kasi usually, larangan pa rin yan ng big business. And when you speak about big industries, sila nga normally yung magdo-dominate. Pero pag nagdo-dominate yung big industries, kalimitan, na-ignore na yung mga nasa baba.
Thank you for pointing that out, Sean. Actually nga, we want to bypass, quote-unquote, big business. Kasi big business naman and big pharma are not interested in, they're interested in other things, no? I mean, well, I don't know about big pharma, but for example, most of the really big names are interested more in real estate and the capitals market. Pero if we want to go, for example, we want to improve, for example, micro, small, and medium enterprises, especially the micro and small. Kumbaga, for example, for example, there's this particular, I go back to mangosteen, no? May isang mangosteen manufacturer. He's been doing very well, but I think his problem is scaling up. That is where, for example, our government could be able to come in and help micro and small businesses scale up when they actually need additional capital na. So, going back to your question, how do we do that? Gusto natin pagbigyan tuon ang micro, small, and medium enterprise, especially the micro and especially the small.
Pero sir, I think all administrations have made that same declaration that they want to help small and medium scale enterprise. I remember nung late 80s, yung Kalakalan 20 ni Oscar Orbos, kaya siya sumikat at ginawang executive secretary ni Cory, was because Kalakalan was supposed to beef up the SMEs. this?
I think the missing point was the political will to be able to carry that out. Now, since I really come from that kind of background, that's exactly what I'm going to be focusing on. I was talking with somebody who well, actually, I'm really considering him to be Secretary for Agriculture, no? Sabi ko sa kanya, bakit interesado ka sa tawag nito, sa mga mahihirap? Malalaking korporasyon na may management dati. Sabi niya, kasi sir, nakaranas kasi ako ng gutom at nakita ko ang gutom. So there is a world of experience. And there's a world of experience. For example, people can make all sorts of declarations, but at the end of the day, what is needed is a political will. And it comes out of vision. It comes out of the hugot. Saan ba nanggagaling yung kanilang gusto mangyari?
Yung political will ay dapat may kaakibat na policy.
Correct.
Framework sa isang presidente.
Correct.
No? At kakailanganin mo ang both houses of Congress.
Correct.
Yung kalakalang 20 ni dating Congressman Oscar Orbos, former Executive Secretary, ang target noon ay hanggang sa komunidad.
Tama.
Is it political will ng presidente o political will ng lahat? Or concretely, anong political will yan?
When I talk about political will, I mean talking about a more inclusive conversation, Cesar. No? For example, hindi lang naman tinutulak pa babae. Dapat kinakausap sila. And that's exactly what I've been doing. I've been going around, people have been asking, for example, what kind of campaign do you hold? Sabi ko, basically, I engage in town halls. I talk with them, I go to them and said, ano iniba nyo, for example, with another presidential vote? Kasi they compare me, let's say, with another faith-based presidential vote. Sabi ko, we are not running on religion. We're running on, for example, we're running on we're running on strategies. And sabi ko, how many people have actually come down and sat with you and asked you what your problems are? And my commitment is I will listen to their solutions. In other words, what you really need, in order to form effective policies, is to actually have a healthy, robust conversations, even if they disagree with you, and even if they tell you, oh, you're BS.
Alright, sa susunod na parte naman ng ating forum, alamin natin kung ano ang plano ng ating mga kandidato para sa edukasyon at sa healthcare system ng bansa. Abangan natin yan sa pagbabalik ng COMELEC KBP Pilipinas Forum 2022. Nagbabalik ang COMELEC KBP Pilipinas Forum 2022. Kasama pa rin po natin si Presidential Candidate Ernesto Abella at ang ating mga panelists na sina Ed Lingao at ng One News at Cesar Chavez ng DZRH. Ngayon naman ay pag-uusapan natin ang edukasyon. Ang ating unang tanong ay manggagaling kay Ed Lingao. Ed.
So, a few months ago, naglabas ng study yung UNESCO, UNICEF at yung World Bank showing na out of every 10 Filipino children, isa lamang ang kaya magbasa ng simpleng teksto at maunawaan ng teksto na yon. And I think that doesn't even already include yung effects ng pandemic kasi even before that may ganun eh. Pero let's boil it down to that. What do you have in mind to beef up our educational system to make sure that the other 9 are able to catch up?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that, Ed. No? Una-una talaga, I believe, since we're not, English is not our mother tongue, and we have other dialects, no? I really suggest that first 3-4 years should be done in mother tongue. Kesyo Bisaya, kesyo this, kesyo that, so that they get a grasp of principles.
Yeah.
Prinsipyo yung una.
May baseline.
May baseline. Pati dapat naintindihan. Lalo sa, kahit 3 hours lang reading, writing, arithmetic. Lalo sa arithmetic. Hindi lang naintindihan addition and subtraction. Hindi kasi, wow, subtraction, that's a multi-million peso word, di ba? Pero pag dagdag, bawas, wow, that's a dangerous word. Ano ba yan? Addition, subtraction. Okay, ganun din. But anyway, basically, I think it should be done first and foremost sa mother tongue. Why? Because they need to understand the basic principles. The basic learning principles, yung mga building blocks, importante talaga yan. The other thing, Ed, I believe that it's truly, truly important is to teach values as soon as possible. Not only that, pati, alam mo, ang kulang talaga kasi natin is a confident national identity. Alam mo, walang sense. There's no sense of nationhood, of being Filipino. At medyo nga minsan pag Pilipino. Pati siyempre, kababasan lang ng mga libro, katitingin. Akala tuloy nila, dati blonde, ngayon dapat chinito. I mean, nagbago no? Pero hindi pa rin Pinoy. Dapat pango. Dapat, So my point is, we need to be able to match education with our realities. And our realities are pretty basic. Kaya lang talaga, nasa nakita ko, akin na lang to. I'm really jumping to huge conclusions. But I really honestly think that much of our education is really intended to dumb down and to downskill our Filipinos so that we can send out low-skilled workers who will receive low-skilled pay.
But that was not the intention of the Congressional Education Commission during the 9th Congress. Remember the DECs, Hinate, TESDA, DepEd, CHED, National Commission on the Cultural and Philippine Sports Authority. Halos lahat yan ay gumana except the NCAA. Kayo, tumatakbo kayo bilang Pangulo. Ano ho ang cultural agenda ho ninyo na pwedeng i-translate into a legislative and executive order kapag kayo ay naging Pangulo?
Unang-una talaga dapat maituro history natin. Our history should really be taught. And history as
and that should be taught in our mother tongue.
Yes.
To be consistent with your proposition.
It should be taught in mother tongue.
Okay.
Tapos saka na lang, tapos in a spiral way, paulit-ulit yan hanggang sa lumalim. For example, grade 1, ganito, grade 2, ganito, grade 3, ganito. Pero dapat matandaan na, alam ng bata, bakit walang snow dito? Bakit maitim tayo? Bakit hindi yung mga ganong klase ba? Pati dapat hindi ikahihiya yung mga ganon. Pati, mga ganong klase. Kasi nga, babantay, we're so cosmopolitan. We lost our sense of identity. Kailangan maisoli ang pagka-Pilipino. So that cultural identity, cultural values, mahalaga, kasama yan.
Sir, balikan ko lang yung sinabi nyo kanina na, well, you have a feeling na the whole system is intended to dumb down yung output ng ating educational system. Could you talk more about that and could you elaborate on your basis for saying that? Because that kahit paano is a heavy hit on DepEd.
No, not on DepEd.
On the system as well.
On the system, on general system. Una-una kasi talaga, kung pag-iisipan mo, Filipinos are smart, guys. We know exactly what to do. We know. Piling-pili tayo sa buong mundo. But on the other hand, bakit yung ating mga economic policies tend to, for example, bakit tayo, ang tanong ng ordinaryong tao, how can we import rice? We can grow rice. rice? How come we import fish? We can grow fish. And how come, for example, our people are so smart, how come they don't, for example, sinabi ko, they don't, only one out
One
of
out of 10.
1 out of 10 goes on to
1 out of 10 lang ang kayang magbasa ng
Magbasa.
simpleng teksto.
correct. And so, can you imagine how many go on to high school? To secondary. So going back, I believe there is, unang-una talaga, we have been, educationally kasi pwede ma-address yan eh. Educationally it can be addressed, but I think what has happened is that there is, I'm sensing ko, there is a tendency to make sure that we are not too well versed in critical thinking, but more geared towards mechanical working. Something more low skill, and then importable ka na. Like for example, the other thing that's also slowly being killed, it seems by benign neglect, is agriculture. Because the subsidy may import, say, wag na tayo magkuha ng bigas, ng palay, kasi we can always import, mas mura pa. That seems to be the thinking. In other words, becoming part of this global value chain. We're becoming part of this global value chain, and slowly we just fit in. It's like being a frog. We're like a frog being boiled slowly, and wala tayong ginagawa about it. So what I'm saying is, somebody needs to say, hey, this has got to stop, guy.
The inconvenient
Alright.
truth.
Okay, lipat naman tayo sa usapan ng healthcare at COVID-19 pandemic. Ang ating unang tanong ay manggagaling kay Cesar Chavez. Cesar.
Secretary, 53 na mga bansa ang pinag-aralan ng Bloomberg. At lumilitaw na tayo ang pinakapalpak batay sa pag-aaral nila. Pinaka-lowest tayo. Saan tayo nagkamali? At kung kayo ang Pangulo, sapagkat tuloy-tuloy pa rin naman ang pandemyang ito, anong executive order na gusto namin makita mula sa inyo?
Una-una, let me put it this way, no. Let's just begin that I will not put it in the terms of palpak.
All right.
Because what they did was according to their best lights. They acted according to their best lights. But what I would do, for example, I would still do the standard thing. Number one, free mass testing. Free mass testing. Dapat covered yan. Pangalawa, precision lockdown if and when necessary. And thirdly, ang dapat binibilang, hindi naman COVID cases ang dapat mabilang, adverse reactions and mortality rates. Na kung saan doon na mataas ang kamatayan, hindi doon na pag-aralan. Pero just, because I think we need to be, where are we coming from? Let's learn to live with this. Let's learn to live with the pandemic. Let's learn to live with COVID-19. Let's make, it can be downgraded to disease number 2 typhoid, cholera, and parang cholera lang siya, or dengue. It's there, but we can live with it.
Dagdag ako ng konting context. Kaya tayo ay pinakamababa batay sa kanilang pag-aaral dahil maaaring walang playbook within the next 3 months mula noong March 2020 pero inabot tayo ng 2 taon, 1 taon, 2 taon. Naging mabagal ang mga decisions ng gobyerno. Ano ho yun?
Well, basically, I think and without putting blame, I think we can say that, katulad na nangyayari, let's say, sa ating neighbor who want zero COVID, massive lockdowns don't exactly work. That's why I'm suggesting precision lockdowns, and only if and when necessary.
So targeted lockdowns.
Targeted lockdowns, and only where there are high mortality rates. Kaso kasi, this is stepping on other ground. No? Pero based on the report, based on several reports, some of the highest death rates resulted from when the vax was rolled out. So there are two schools of thought regarding that. So that's why I'm saying, check the adverse reaction, check the mortality rate, and make sure that we don't just lock down because we need the face-to-face. After all, our people are micro, small, and medium enterprise people. People need to have face-to-face. Kailangan makipag-negosyo. Paano kang bibenta ng siopaw kung hindi naman pwede i-online yung siopaw?
What about your plans, sir? Yeah, for
let me
basic...
back about, you were saying something like the higher death rates were during the vaccination.
Well, apparently, there's a report out there that when the vaccines were rolled out in March 2021, the death rate spiked. And if kung susundan mo kung saan naman nag-down, I think, basta pwedeng sundan kasi, it's not directly, this is not saying it's directly correlated, but there seems to be some sort of correlation.
Yes, sir. But of course, it could be cause and effect, but it could also be an effect, and this is the cure. I mean, you could possibly look at it that way na mataas ang death rates, that's why they rolled out vaccinations all the more. I mean, there are two ways of looking at that.
Actually, nag-start ang COVID sa atin noong 2020, tama?
Apo.
But the death rates were not noticeable. The death rates remained more or less normal within the normal range. But when the vax was rolled out, it looks like there was also a spike.
Is that your opinion, Secretary? Sapagkat gumaganyan tayo, tapos tumaas yung ating...
That's not my opinion, that's just my observation.
Secretary, bakunado na ho ba kayo?
I have natural immunity.
What does that mean, sir? You acquired COVID already?
Actually, I acquired COVID.
But scientists say that that's not enough. In fact, they say that the hybrid immunity is the better kind of immunity.
Well, there are several schools of thought regarding that. But on the other hand, I seem to be surviving pretty well.
All right, we'll just pause for a short break at ipagpapatuloy natin ang usapan sa ating pagbabalik. Nagbabalik ang COMELEC KBP PiliPinas Forum 2022. At kasama pa rin po natin si Presidential Candidate Ernesto Abella. Ipagpapatuloy natin ang ating usapan sa healthcare. Ed, may tanong ka.
Sir, balikan ko lang yung kanina pag-usapan natin. If you do become president,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
well, okay. Pero sir, whatever the case is, if you do step into Malacanang, kasagsagan yun ng programa ng bakunahan ng gobyerno. But on the other hand, the impression I'm getting is that you're not exactly a proponent of vaccinations. Sabi nga ninyo, natural immunity ang inyong inaasahan. So saan pupunta yung vaccination program ng gobyerno? Will you pursue it? Will it not be as encouraged anymore? And
No, well, let's put it this way. Again, let me go back to my 4 bottom lines. No? Una, people's welfare. Secondly, planet. And third, of course, revenue. And then purpose. Unang-una, tingnan natin ang epekto sa mga tao. At the end of the day, kasi the issue at hand is whether vaccination. I know it's an old trope, no?
Yeah.
It's already used trope, but while it is still experimental, the option should be available. It's not yet fully assured. It's not yet fully assured.
And the option is?
And the option is you can opt out. You can opt not to be vaccinated. On the other hand, there are two actually there's only one real vulnerable sector, and that is the adult, and that is the senior people. And they should be cared for. Their immune system should be boosted. And and the other thing, of course, regarding healthcare though, and it is stepping one step aside from COVID-19, is to make sure that children within the first 1,000 days of their life should be cared for properly and given proper nutrition. Otherwise, we will have a more stunted population. And by the way, we already have the most stunted population in ASEAN. It used to be Indonesia, but now this is the Philippines. We have the smallest kids, we have the smallest brains, and small brain, small mind, it's almost correlated.
That's what I wanted to ask you, Sec. Healthcare, even before the pandemic, here in the country was
Correct.
dismal. Access to it is almost impossible. Some people, kahit they can afford naman, it's just not available. How do you plan to bring healthcare out? You mentioned kanina you wanted to bump up agriculture and domestic tourism. How can we do that when the healthcare system is, sorry to say, it's very much lacking? And another thing is, kasi, di ba, bago ka mag-aral, bago ka makapagtrabaho, kailangan malusog ka. It's very basic.
Correct. Now, I totally agree with your malusog idea. And if there's anything at all that we should really take care of, is precisely our youth, no? Make sure that they're properly fed, properly nourished. I mean, I tend to listen to the words of Minu Shafiq, the current head of London School of Economics. Ang lagi yung sinasabi, dapat alagaan natin ang nasa primary at saka yung senior. Those who are starting off and those who are in the golden years. Dapat pangalagaan talaga natin yon. And how do we do that? By making sure that they're given all the proper nutrition, health care, especially in both ends, parang binubuk end. Tapos, kumbaga, kahit na libre yan, yung nasa gitna, yun ang magbabayad.
Alright, dumako naman tayo sa iba pang mga issues, sir.
Secretary, ang Pangulo ay nagdesisyonan na putulin yung isabong at sinundan na yan. Timely ho ba ang desisyon niya o mabagal ang desisyon ng ating Pangulo?
Ay, yung patungkol sa isabong.
Isabong ho.
Ang masasabi ko dyan siguro is dapat may alternative. Bigyan din natin ng alternatibo yung nahinto ng isabong. Alam mo, katulad kahapon, naglalakad ako sa doon ako sa may bandang malapit sa Luneta. People think it's part of everyday life. And I can also understand where they're coming from.
Secretary, from the start ng programang ito, you've been mentioning increased conversation
Yes.
with people para kasama sila sa decision-making process. Kung kayo ang maging Pangulo at narinig nyo na ang mga balita na maraming nagpakamatay, maraming nalugi, maraming nasira ang buhay, OFW Pilipino dahil sa isabong, gaano kayo katagal magdidesisyon?
Let's put it this way. When you see a reasonable balance, then we should act. So, for example, katulad yan, I would take off from where the president has made the decision now. Kung hininto niya, hinto natin, tuloy-tuloy natin.
Ang gusto nyo ay may iba pang alternatibo na
Hindi po. Ang sinasabi ko na decision na yan, tutuloy natin yan. Tapos ang gagawin natin, bibigyan of course natin ng options para may magawang matino yung mga apektado.
Such as po, Sec? Ano pong alternative?
More jobs. For example, alam mo, isang dapat kasi talaga dapat lifelong learning. I can understand, I can almost empathize with the people who are doing it. Kung wala ka na talagang makikita sa buhay mo, wala kang option, wala kang alternatibo, then maybe this is one, yung mga stabs in the dark, so that meron kang makita man lang. So my point is this: if we are able to generate enough, for example, enough options, enough alternatives, employment and business opportunities for these people, why not? We can actually help them. Like for example, going back, alam mo yung mga bags na Divisoria bags? Yung Divisoria bags na
Yung Louis Vuitton na...
yung naging Louis Vuitton.
Bayong
di ba?
Shaga. Bayong Shaga.
Anong tawag niya?
Bayong Shaga.
Ilabas mo, Sean. Ilabas mo.
Katulad, what I mean to say is, I had somebody is close to me who actually began to recycle plastics and began to, pwede magawa kasi, pwede talaga magawa ng paraan. Kulang lang talaga ng tao, motibo tsaka modelo. And this is what we'd like to be able to propose, and I'd like to bring it up, hindi nyo na itatanong. Meron tayong proposal sana for a National Volunteer Corps. The National Volunteer Corps between ages 18 to 35, or increasingly kahit na 45 later, this would act like a local Peace Corps, like a domestic Peace Corps. They help in, for example, in education, community building, reforestation, replanting of and also in building up new business opportunities. There are ways and means. There are many, many ways of doing it. We don't have to, ang nangyari kasi sa atin, we are brown people, but we're trying to put on white mental skills. Hindi bagay.
At bago tayo magtapos, bibigyan namin kayo ng 2 minuto para sagutin ang ating huling tanong.
Ano yun?
Ano ang magiging tatak ng administrasyon mo?
Ang magiging tatak is siglo Pilipino. We want a Philippine century. It is a century of a peaceful economic rise of the Philippines. And isang tatak nito is, I'm like somebody asked, you're independent. How do you want, sabi ko, I'm willing to work with anybody. But more so, God willing, put as president, I would continue a lot of the good things that the president has done. And I would talk to the next one and say, let's do it this way. And then the third one, if we could establish a train, a policy train, a perspective, na kung the next several presidents to be able to build a solid foundation for the peaceful economic rise of the Philippines. A siglo Filipino. And if we did that, and with the participation of our mga kababayan natin, we could have a nation that is worthy of the Philippines and Filipinos worthy of our nation.
Alright, maraming salamat, Ernesto Abella.
Ernie.
Thank you, Sec.
Maraming salamat,
Thank you, sir.
Ernie Abella. Muli, ako si Sean Yao ng One News, kasama ang ating mga panelists na sina Ed Lingao ng One News at Cesar Chavez ng DZRH. Ito ang COMELEC KBP Forum 2020.